Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, 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 oh Jayanma, 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 Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, 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 oh Jayanma, Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, Jehovah, ni ikama mere, sorom Jayanma, 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 Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, Janu Jehovah, Dunia se Kennedy, Rebedi Ebi. Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, 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 Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, Janu Jehovah, Dunia se Kennedy, Rebedi Ebi. Janu Jehovah, Jayanma, Jayanma,
We're at the Ed School, right? So we're all educators. You guys are acting like my class. I'm a high school teacher. You ever prepare a lesson plan and you go in and your students just look at you like, you guys, give me something that touched you from the article, something new, something. All right, so this isn't that kind of party. So when part of celebrating the creativity and spirituality of Black culture is thinking about those traditions. And one of those traditions is call and response, for example. Do we know what call and response is? Good example. That was really, really well done. Okay? So, and the dialogical experience is also part of it. So, and I know you've been to performances where, you know, you wanted to clap and then you realized no one else was clapping. Well, that was the end of the movement, but we have to, again, not that kind of party. So you can clap at any time. You can express your enjoyment for the music. If you're enjoying yourself, if you're not, feel free to. Right, that's okay too. But you can show that. You can be a part of that. You can. I'm not asking you to sing out loud, right? But you can if you're so moved. But feel free to enjoy with us. Okay? Do we get that? Do we get that? Come on. This is the Ed School. I'll talk about the Ed School. I'm Hugsy 98. Okay? So I know that was a long time ago. But so it feels good to come here. But don't make me feel bad about it. All right, let's that's the F. That's the F. Let's rise. I'll rise. Basis. Two, three. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me down in the very dirt, but still like the dust I'll rise. Does my happiness upset you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I'll laugh like I got an oil well pumping up in my front yard. So you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, but I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise. Out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. Oh, I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I got a diamond mine breaking up in my living room. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes. Oh, but I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, rise, rise. Out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, rise, rise. Out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, bringing the gifts my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. So you may cut me with your eyes, but I'll rise, I'll rise, oh, I'll rise. Out of the shacks of history's shame, up from a past rooted in pain. Oh, I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, rise, rise. I'm gonna rise, I'll rise, oh, I'll rise, rise, rise. Said I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise, rise, rise. So that was, hopefully we recognize those words. That was based on a poem by Maya Angelou. See, this is the educator. I told y'all, they know. Maya Angelou, and the poem is "And Still I'll Rise." It was Ben Harper's take on our take on Ben Harper's take on Maya Angelou's poem. We'd like to do a few more for you. So this next one, you know, and it is known as the African American or Black National Anthem. And so, if you're able, we'd appreciate it if you stand. But we'll just sing the first and the third verse of "Lift Every Voice and Sing."
Ring with the horn. out of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places our God where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you. You can sit. You can sit. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. No, nobody turn me round. Keep on a walking, keep on a talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Keep on a walking, keep on a talking, marching up to freedom land. Let me tell you a little story about Moses and his battle with the Pharaoh. After hundreds of years of captivity, said it was time to let his people go. So he led God's people out of Egypt land, about as far as the Red Sea. Then he forged ahead as he said, not even an ocean can stop me. I ain't gonna let nobody, ain't gonna let nobody, I'm gonna keep on walking, talking, marching up to freedom land. Sometimes it seems like the world is tumbling down and nothing seems to go your way, and you're scared because you don't know what tomorrow may bring. But just hear what I have to say. You can win, cause I promise you're never alone, no matter the time or the place. If you never give up and you never give in, I know we can finish the race. So don't you let nobody, don't you let nobody, gotta keep on walking, talking, marching up to freedom land. I ain't gonna let nobody, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody, I'm gonna keep on talking, fighting, praying, hoping, and singing while we're marching up to freedom land. Thank you. Whew. So we know wherever there's struggle, wherever we find struggle, we find music. Music is that thing that continues to encourage us, allows us to find hope in hopelessness.
Right? It allows us to persevere when we feel like we can't go on. And the traditions that we sing from, particularly looking at the spirituals, and so much of the music that comes out of the spirituals, are really born from and steeped in that tradition of continuance, of hope, of perseverance. And we know that music plays that part in our own lives often. Sometimes it is, I just want to listen to that song because I just need a good cry. But a lot of times it's like, I know some of you have that, you're on your treadmill and you put on that song, treadmill, not treadmilling, but maybe you go to treadmill. But you know what I mean, that song that allows you to keep going. And so in these songs, I'm hoping you're hearing, there's a lot of that. That last song, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, is coming out of the civil rights tradition, where people were facing down the fire hoses and the dogs and the abuse and the police and the hatred, often facing it with dignity and with calm and with poise, which is something I would struggle with. Something I struggle with. I'm a high school teacher. I struggle with it every day. Right? To face disrespect with dignity. And so we use these songs to pull from those traditions, to encourage us, to allow us, to remind us that even though things seem really bad sometimes, that we've been there before and we can keep going. It is a season and we'll get out of it. We have to work, but we've come a long way. Segue. All right, so we're gonna sing two more songs for you. This one's called We Come a Long Way. Yeah. We come a long way, yes. We come a long way. Help me sing it.
We come a long way.
We come a long way.
We come a long way.
We come through the storm.
We come through the storm. We come through the rain, knowing that the Lord will make a way. We had our trials, oh yes.
We come a long way.
We come a long way.
We come a long way, my God. We come a long way. Help me sing it.
Come a long way.
We come
Come a long way.
We come through the storm, yeah.
Come through the storm. We come through the
Knowing the
knowing that the
Lord.
Lord would make a way. We had our trials, oh yes.
Oh, we come a long way.
We come a long way.
Now there was a time that thought we weren't human, and then we grew to 3/5 of a man. But now I'm standing here today 'cause somebody made a way, and it's my turn to lend a helping hand. Now I don't know what got them up each morning, and I don't know how they made it through each day, but they found the strength to carry on, though the road was rough and long, and their struggle taught us how to fight and pray. We come a long, long way, yes we have. We come a long way. Help me sing it.
Come a long way, yeah.
We've come
Come a long way.
We bear our burdens, yes we did.
Bear our burdens in the heat of the day.
Knowing the Lord.
Lord would make a way. We had our trials, oh
We had our trial, yes we did.
we had our trials, oh
Of the rough side of the mountain, yo.
we had our trials, oh
struggling and surviving.
We had our trials, oh
We had our trials, yeah, yeah.
we had our trials, oh yes.
We come a mighty long way.
We come a long way.
Thank you. Okay, this last one is was made famous by Kirk Franklin, who, if you're into gospel at all, the name may sound familiar. It also starts not in English, so again, don't be confused, but it self-translates. The song's called Be Like Him. G. Quasi, 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 qua bona gala, tina sofana nae, quasi, qua bona gala, tina sofana nae, quasi, qua bona gala, tina sofana nae, 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 quasi, qua bona gala, tina sofana nae, quasi, qua bona gala, tina sofana nae, tina sofana nae, tina sofana nae, tina sofana nae, tina sofana nae. When he comes,
I shall be like him.
when he comes,
When he comes, I shall be like him.
sing no more pain,
For pain, I shall be like him.
see his face.
See his face, I shall be like him.
Everybody sing sing
Like him.
when he comes.
When he comes, I shall be like him.
Can hardly wait when he
I
comes.
shall be
Oh,
like him.
everybody sing everybody clap your hands and say
Tina sofana nae.
quasi,
Tina sofana nae.
sofana nae,
Tina sofana nae.
sofana nae,
Tina sofana nae.
nae, tina,
Sofana nae.
sofana nae,
Sofana nae. Tina sofana nae.
sofana nae,
Sofana nae. Tina sofana nae.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure to sing for you, to share a little bit of what we do with you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
You know, sometimes when people say that's a tough act to follow, I think they're just being polite. That's not how I feel right now. But good evening and welcome. My name is Marty West. I have the privilege of serving as academic dean at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and am very glad to be welcoming you on behalf of the school to this event. This event marks the release of an important report by our own Urban Scott and Brian Jensen of Brigham Young University. That report, entitled Faith in Educational Renewal, Religion as a Resource to Transform Learning Opportunities, offers, in my view, a fresh perspective on and forces us to ask a fresh question about the inequalities in educational opportunity that have long characterized K-12 education in the United States. The barrier to progress, they argue, has not been a failure to recognize the problem. No, these disparities persist despite decades of increased investment and efforts at reform. The question they force us to ask is, have we been fighting this battle with one hand tied behind our backs? After all, we have growing evidence that Personal religious faith is associated with and may causally contribute to students' educational success. We know that many educators, and I would put myself in this camp, cite their religious commitment as central to their sense of calling into the profession. And we've seen how partnerships with faith-based organizations, when thoughtfully designed, can strengthen schools and the students they serve. So why don't we see more efforts to capitalize on the potential of faith communities in addressing our educational challenges? And why, I have to ask myself, don't we see more discussion of that possibility in schools of education like HGSE? I won't spoil things by giving you the answer to those questions. I'll just say that I learned a lot from reading this report, and I look forward to continuing that learning process tonight. As we dive in, Irvin and Bryant would like to acknowledge the partnership of the Wheatley Institute at BYU, the Grove Collective Foundation, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their partnership on the report and their support of this event. So I'll now turn the podium over to the director of the Wheatley Institute's Religion Initiative, Paul Lambert, to tell you a bit about their organization. Thank you again for being here, and look forward to learning with you.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. I'd like to cede my time to the choir. Unfortunately, it appears that I don't even see him in the back. I'm sure you would like to cede my time to the choir as well. My goal here is just to talk a little bit about why we're so excited as a Wheatley Institute at BYU to be part of this. But first of all, thank you, Marty. Excuse me. Thank you, Marty. Thank you to the Graduate School of Education here at Harvard. Thank you to Irvin, to Bryant for inviting us here. We're just so pleased to be part of this and pleased to be able to launch, have this as our first launch event. The report was just released just last week, and so we're thrilled that we're here to talk about this. Just a few words of reflection as before we dive into our conversation. As was mentioned, I'm the director of the Religion and Human Flourishing Initiative at the Wheatley Institute. Often people confuse that and think, oh, religion's in there, this guy must be a theologian or a scriptorian. I'm none of those. Our interest within the Religion Initiative is to understand the role of religion in society. What role does that play? And specifically, what role can pluralism, religious pluralism, play in a flourishing and stable society? And that's exactly what this report is about, and why we're interested in this conversation. I often get asked, what does religion have to do with the thing that we're talking about, in this case, education? And let me just offer a few thoughts. Especially in the last year, as people have learned about this report, the development of this report, I get some version of the following question. Religion and public education, do those actually go together? Or what about the separation of church and state? What gives here? I don't understand. I'm sure my colleagues are going to go much deeper into this, but let me offer a couple of reflections that I think illustrate exactly why we're so interested in this question at the Wheatley Institute, and why we're so thankful to partner with our friends here at Harvard and the Graduate School of Education on this particular topic. First of all, to the question of separation of church and state, for those of us familiar with where that statement comes from, which is a letter from Thomas Jefferson in 1802, wasn't to separate church and state, to say that never shall the twain interact, but rather he was communicating to a group of Baptists to say, I'm sorry that you have been withheld from communicating your interest when we think about policy and the way we live in the United States. Rather, the Constitution serves as a way that all groups, all people, whatever their religion or none, should have equal access to put forward their ideas. And how grateful we are that that is true, that you don't have to have a test, you don't have to pass a test in order to put your idea forth, wherever that idea comes from. And so this idea that we want to support people of all faiths or none, in other words, we want to support the idea that religious pluralism truly matters, is at the heart of why we're interested in this conversation. Secondly, and Marty spoke to this in the context of teachers and teachers being called, some teachers being called to this through their particular religious faith lens. I want to suggest that there are two ways that we can look at the role that religion plays, whether we're talking about education or any aspect of society. And that is the individual level and the societal level, or the private good and the public good. That is that I think we all recognize the importance of allowing someone to live according to their conscience. In fact, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, were built on these ideas, right, of protection of conscience. We all understand that it's important for me or my family to be able to live the way we feel is most important for us, and that my neighbor, who might be very different than me, be able to live according to those same principles, things that they hold true and are sacred to them. But often we leave it there. And one thing I'd invite us to think about is, yes, we all recognize that private good and that private need. But what about the public good? What does my neighbor, who may be very different from me, what does allowing them or creating an environment where they can live true to who they are, what does that bring to our community? What does allowing people of lots of different faiths, or none, being true to what they feel is most important to them, what are the goods that come from that commitment and them living up to that? And my invitation is to ask that question, for us to ask that question. And in this case, of course, our argument is that creating an environment of pluralism, allowing people to live according to what they truly believe, will bring tremendous goods, not just at the individual level, not just at that private level, but at the public level, at that societal level. With that in mind, I'm so grateful to be here. We're so grateful as a Wheatley Institute to be able to support this report. When Bryant and I first talked about this a few years ago now, I think, it was so obvious that this fits into the kind of work we're so excited to be a part of. And I do also want to call out specifically Irvin for the role that he's played and the experience and expertise that he's brought to this to really enrich this report. And on that note, you know Irvin as a professor here in Hugsey. I'm delighted to turn the time over to him, the podium over to him, to introduce our conversation. Thank you, Irvin.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's great to see you. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Paul. And the Kumbha singers, I wish they were still here, but I went to the door to just try to give them oh, there they are. They're waving at me. Let's give them one more round of applause. They were amazing. They themselves are students. It's an honor to welcome you here at Harvard Graduate School of Education for this year's Burton and Inglis Lecture. It's a joy. It's a real honor to be here. Before we begin, I want to start with a simple question. I'm a teacher at heart. I was teaching today. Some of my students who were with me today are out there in the audience right now. Good to see you. In my faith, education, and leadership course and other courses that I teach here. When you saw this title, Can Faith Communities Close Opportunity Gaps in Public Schools? I have a question. Were you excited? Were you concerned? Were you neutral? Everybody, you've got to think of one. You've got to pick one. You've got to pick one. Were you excited? Were you concerned? Were you neutral? Everyone get your answer in your head? Turn to your neighbor real quick, 30 seconds. We've got to do a do now. 30 seconds. Answer the question. Which one were you? Real quick. Go ahead, real quick. 30 seconds. I didn't see it, so I just...
I was excited. Okay. Who tested it out front? I need to test it in here.
Ten seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Awesome. It never fails. Since our poll didn't work, we're going to do the old-fashioned way, hands. Those who said, I was excited, raise your hand and look around. Okay, look around, everyone look around. Okay, wow, all right. It's a friendly group here today. But be honest, were you a bit concerned? Raise your hand. Thank you for your candor and honesty. And how many people were like, I just saw it and saw the food, and I was like, Clark. Thank you for your honesty, Clark. So, what you just experienced is exactly why this conversation matters. Because when we bring together faith and public education, as Paul alluded to, we bring together different perspectives. Curiosity for some, concern for others. Uncertainty for many. And in a diverse, pluralistic society like ours, that's not something to avoid. It's something to engage thoughtfully. Because underneath those different reactions, there is something I suspect that we share. A commitment to ensuring that every young person flourishes academically and beyond. Before I share a few stories, I want to ground this moment in a simple idea from the sociologist Howard Becker at the University of Chicago. He said this quote, I have it here. All research is in some sense autobiographical. Such a true quote as it relates to this work. So tonight I'll share 3 brief moments from my own personal journey, not as a universal experience, but as one lens into the questions we're taking on through these reports. We have 2 reports. The BYU report around education renewal, you should have picked them up. And then the other report done in collaboration with Grove Collective around faith and education partnerships happening on the ground in the southeast of this country. 2 reports. So, the biographical perspective real quick. I grew up as the 5th of 6 children in a family deeply rooted in the church, particularly the Church of God in Christ, Kojic. In my family, my parents are devout believers and leaders in the church. So growing up, we were there. Listen when I tell you, all the time. At first, I went because I had to. But over time, I began to go because I wanted to. I felt compelled to. And what I understand now is that I was being shaped by community, by shared practices, by a sense of purpose and accountability. There he is. I know you were wondering. You were trying to figure out. A sense of accountability. And while that experience was grounded in my particular faith tradition, and the broader patterns and ideas are not unique to me. We see research that actually sheds light on that. There are millions of students in our schools today who are shaped by faith communities, cultural traditions, and other sources of meaning and belonging in their lives. And there is growing research exploring how those experiences influence their development, academically, socially, and emotionally. And so one of the things we try to do in this report with our partnership with BYU is begin to shed light on that, the research around that. So I go on to college. This is me out of college, and I carry my faith with me into the classroom. High school English teacher, J.P. McCaskey East High School, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I carry my faith into that classroom. It shapes how I see my students. It shapes how I see my responsibilities. I often say teaching is not just a profession. I used to say this years ago. I feel like for me, it's a calling. Already alluded to by our speakers. And in my tradition, that calling is grounded in a belief that we are accountable to something greater and someone greater than ourselves. And what I've come to learn is that sense of calling shows up in many different ways. For some educators, it's rooted in faith. For others, it comes from deeply held values, commitments to justice, or a profound belief in the potential of young people. But the through line is the same, a commitment to not give up on students. And our research is helping us better understand how that sense of purpose shapes teaching, leadership, and persistence in schools across the country, particularly public schools. Later on, I become a principal of a large urban high school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. One day, while in my job early on, a member of a church not too far from our school, the Chestnut Avenue Mennonite Church, just down the street, came to me as the principal, and they asked a simple question. How can I help? How can we help? We heard you're a new principal. How can we help? What can we do? Church, right down the street. That conversation became a partnership. Over time, that congregation supported our school, cleaning the library, hosting faculty lunches, showing up in meaningful ways. And before I left, the pastor invited my family and me to a service and presented us with that quilt that now sits in the banister in my home. Incidentally, I left to come here to Harvard Graduate School of Education to work on my doctorate. It's a symbol of care, it's a symbol of partnership. And while this particular partnership was faith-based, it reflects a broader truth. Schools thrive when they are connected to communities. Let me say that again. Schools thrive when they are connected to community of many kinds that are invested in the well-being of young people. These three experiences, students shaped by meaning-making communities, educators driven by purpose, and partnerships that support schools form the foundation of tonight's conversation. That personal connection as a student, that educator connection, and then that partnership. This evening, we are sharing insights from two reports that examine the scale and impacts of faith, religion, and spirituality across these areas. You'll hear what we're learning from research and what's happening on the ground, particularly across the southern states of the United States. We have individuals who actually come from those communities to talk about what they're doing in partnership with public schools. And I want to say clearly, faith and religion are already playing a meaningful role in our schools. To go back to our title, can they? Can it? It already is. What we're hoping to show is how that's happening. And they are doing this while respecting, to Paul's point, the separation of church and state. Not by imposing beliefs, but by contributing to community purpose and support for young people. I have my colleague, Orr Rose, who's here. I'm going to turn it over to Orr before I introduce our next couple of speakers, my colleague, Brian Jensen, and also Nicole Baker-Fulgham, who were lead writers on the report. But I asked Orr Rose to come because we've been doing this work at the intersection of faith and education for quite a while now, and Orr has sort of been there from the beginning. First of all, he does this work in a very rich way over at Hebrew College. He's also involved in a larger interfaith America effort where this work is happening for higher ed. And I said, Orr, could you just come in for just a few minutes? And he actually changed his schedule. He actually's got to get away. But he said, I'll come in, Irvin, just to talk about what we're learning at the higher ed level, as well as what we're doing at Hebrew College and what we've been doing in Boston. Put your hands together for Orr Rose real quick.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with all of you, and I'm sorry that I have to leave so quickly, but the conversation will continue. I must say that it's a particular pleasure to be with you, Irvin, in person, because we forged our relationship during the height of the COVID pandemic. I visited your class more than once, and we had several long, intensive, and transformative conversations about this very subject. So to be here in person is not to be taken for granted. I'll just share one set of experiences from the field. As Irvin said, I am a professor at Hebrew College, just a few miles from here, and among the programs that we sponsor is a project for high school students called the Dignity Project. And the aim of that project is to try and cultivate religious and secular leaders, not leaders to be, but young people who have been identified by their teachers, their mentors, their religious, spiritual, ethical elders as already playing lead roles in their communities. And we select between 18 and 22 every year from across Greater Boston, and they go through a 6-month period of dialogical engagement, and they work together on creative arts projects, and it has been personally transformative. And I think, given the ways in which I toggle between different religious and educational communities, the most important thing that I can say here, and that I'd love to continue to explore with all of you, is the following. We are clearly struggling in the context of higher education when it comes to various questions of diversity and the aspiration of pluralism. And to quote, one of the godmothers of the field of religious pluralism, Harvard's own Dr. Diana Eck, diversity and pluralism are not the same thing. Diversity is the sheer fact of a population, and pluralism is an ethos that we have been reaching for since the beginning of this country. And I think, based on my 7 years of experience now with this high school cohort, that we need to invest much more time, energy, and money in helping prepare young people to go off to colleges and universities and into professional life. And I think, in relation to what our opening speaker said, part of the challenge is confusion around church-state issues. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation with Irvin and as many others of you who are interested and willing to think about how we prepare young people better to articulate their values and commitments out of the depths of their identities, and how they bring those forth when they sojourn into campus and work life, in which they are often experiencing a diversity of opinion, of commitment, of belief, ideological, political, religious, that can be overwhelming. And then there are real pressures to conform. I see it with my own daughter, who's a freshman at Wellesley College. There are pressures because, socially speaking, these people are forging their identities with greater independence, and we're also in the midst of a reckoning with great loneliness among young people. So it is understandable that people want to meet and feel like they are accepted. And at the same time, I'm trying to encourage my daughter, for example, but all of the young people that we're working with, to think carefully about where they come from, what they are taking with them, how they are sifting and sorting and clarifying their religious, spiritual, ethical identities as they make their way in the world. And part of this, of course, is inspired by the tremendous pain that I, as a rabbi and a Jewish educator, have witnessed since October 7th, 2023. That is, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is just now heartbreaking beyond what I could articulate for far too many people, of course, has spilled over onto college and university campuses. I don't need to say that at Harvard. You know it well. So this is especially important, I think, now. And, of course, in an American context where political and ideological polarization has perhaps never been this intense, at least in my lifetime. So how do we call people in? Thickly, though, not thinly. How do we say to a Jewish young person or to a Muslim young person or to fill in the blanks, we want you to come and bring with you what you consider the best of what you've been raised on. Everyone comes from somewhere. And our identities, particularly in this liminal time of young adulthood, should be viewed as assets, not as liabilities. And the ability, of course, that we human beings all suffer with is holding the tension between particularity and universality. And some of us sometimes are more frightened by what separates us, and some of us sometimes are more frightened, interestingly, by what we share in common. Because both of those tensions require us to do the difficult work of saying, on the one hand, I am utterly unique. And on the other hand, I am a human being like everyone else in this room and far beyond. So that's just a brief report from the field. One of the things that's been very powerful is engaging students both from religious and secular and spiritual but not religious or none of the above communities, but asking all of them, inviting all of them, encouraging all of them to think about their identities again as sources of strength as they take the next step forward in their growth and development. So I'm just so honored to share a few minutes with you. I'm excited to read more of the report and continue the conversation. How do we do this well? How do we think about developing this ethos of pluralism together? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Or two takeaways real quick. Thick. Everyone say thick. Thick. Not thin is what he said. Come in thickly with your identity. And then he mentioned something that I hear all the time. When I tell people I'm doing work at the intersection of faith and education, they say, why now? Of all the times you could be doing that work, why now? And he just confirmed it. I can't think of a better time to do it now, in the midst of so many challenges. I'm going to turn it over to our first individual, my first colleague. I've got so many colleagues and friends we'll be hearing from. But Brian Jensen, professor at BYU in the McKay School of Education, he and I collaborated around the first report, and he's going to come and show you the findings and recommendations and just take you a little bit through that report. You have access to it, but it's simply been a joy to work with him. Not only did we work together collaboratively around the writing, although he led most of the writing, he's an amazing writer, but we actually connected on a personal level. His son Clark is here, but my wife went out to BYU to do some work, and I spent some time with his family. Met Clark early. He's a great football player, by the way. You guys should know that about Clark. And he came over here and went with me to PT. Some of you know that church, and we just had a wonderful colleagueship and fellowship. Would you please welcome Brian Jensen?
When Irvin Scott leads, I've known him long enough, you follow. So I'm going to do it too. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. What a pleasure to be with you. I know that we have a panel, so I'm going to share a few quick high-level findings from this report. The report is available here. It's available online. You can find it at wheatley.byu.edu, or you can just do a Google search. I tried it, and it worked. Faith and Educational Renewal. And it should pop up for you. I'm also going to follow Rabbi Orr's lead, and he sort of identified some tensions. So I'm going to identify a key tension that we grappled with. The thing is, about a good dilemma, you don't solve it, you manage it, right? And holding things in tension is important. And one sort of, on one end, as Irvin and I wrote this report, we wanted to make a case for, or even advocate for, a third way for faith and public education to participate. It's already happening, and we think it should happen more. Respecting the limits of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, that any partnership between government and religious faith, one, should have a secular or civic purpose. Two, it should not lead to excessive entanglement, right? That's part of the Lemon Test from the 1971 Supreme Court decision. And third, it should neither advance nor inhibit religious expression. Those principles are really important to us, and that's the core of our argument, of our advocacy, if you will. On the other hand, I'm a researcher, right? I want to follow the empirical evidence. And so the thing that was in tension with our advocacy, if you will, was this idea of, well, what evidence is there that religious faith or faith communities, and we operationalize that in the report in specific ways. We look at the faith of students, the faith of families, the faith of educators, the educational, secular sort of programs of religious organizations. To what extent do these things actually make a difference in students' learning opportunities across a variety of communities, mostly in the United States, but we look at empirical evidence outside as well. And so I hope you find evidence in the report that we sought sincerely to manage that tension well. There are some inconvenient findings in the report, right? The fact that religious faith the benefits on students can vary by certain affiliations or denominations. That the effects are stronger for boys than for girls. The fact that they're stronger in working class communities than they are in professional class communities. And so we grapple with those nuances. What are the mechanisms? What are the vehicles? What are the contexts through which faith can contribute to closing learning opportunity gaps? And so here's the report. Here's the QR code for it. You have hard copies of it. I hope that you'll read it, and I hope that you'll write us, and we can continue this discussion. We hope this is the beginning of many fruitful discussions that are research-driven. These are the three areas that we cover in the research: the impact of faith on students on their academic outcomes, and of their families. Some of the reviewers, because we had folks review this, asked us the question, well, is it really the faith of the student that is driving things, or is it the faith of the family? And there's actually some good evidence to show, because not all children within families exercise faith the same. They don't all pray the same. They don't all attend mosque or synagogue or church the same, right? There's a variation in religious practices within families. And there are some good studies with statistical controls that show that individual student faith matters above and beyond or controlling for family faith. I'm getting ahead of myself and sharing the findings. The second was, to what extent do these programs that have a civic purpose, a secular purpose, education programs of faith organizations support student learning and growth? And lastly, this was the area that I'm most interested in as a teacher educator. How does the religious faith of educators inform their work, their professional experiences, and what evidence is there that there's impact on their students? So here's the sequence of topics in the report, and I'll just keep moving along. So I want to share just a brief summary of findings. The first couple are not necessarily new. They've been well established. Dr. Alana Horwitz has a wonderful book on this topic that I recommend to all of you about God, grades, and graduation. Thank you. See? Following his lead. And she's already established these things, that yes, there are academic benefits in terms of not only academic learning, but also higher levels of aspiration for educational attainment and actual levels of educational attainment as well. Another thing that she establishes and that we find as well is that the mechanisms through which religious faith benefits students are threefold. One, the moral codes of conduct or the moral values that they develop, right? If you don't go out and party on the weekends because your faith teaches you not to, it turns out there's an academic benefit to not doing drugs and drinking and so on, right? Those moral codes of conduct are a mechanism through which faith benefits students. Second, they learn certain skills. You know, there was one study that we looked at I thought was really curious, that studying the Bible, the Old Testament, led students to better understand and make sense of Shakespeare in high school literature class. I thought that was really interesting. And then lastly, the mechanism is social networks. And this is especially important when you have congregations or faith communities that bring students and families of different socioeconomic statuses together, right? Those intra-class relationships can be fostered in wonderful ways by going to church, by attending synagogue, by participating during the week in faith-based activities. Those social networks, that social capital is important. We also found that there are some contexts that through which these effects can vary. I mentioned social class. Also, I mentioned gender and faith orientation. But there's not as much evidence on that. This is when we begin to see, you know, we're trying to be true to the findings, right? That we need more work on the context through which these effects can vary, right? Or the moderating factors, if you will. You can tell I'm a researcher when I say moderating factor, right? We also found some evidence that these educational programs actually do make a difference in student outcomes. We found in particular that, that there are programs that help home literacy practices. You know, these programs include mentoring, tutoring, parent education, donation of school supplies. There's a host of activities. Some of them have been mentioned here. And there's some evidence to show that they do have a direct effect on student and family educational outcomes. And lastly, the finding that's been talked about a little bit already, that teachers who are, on average, more religious than other professions, and it's probably not a surprise, express feeling a transcendent experience or an experience with the divine or a calling in their decision to become a teacher. And that they often draw on their spirituality or their religiosity to manage stress. Yes, education and being an educator can be stressful. It's demanding work. It's why it's important. It's extremely demanding. And educators report that their religious faith helps them to sustain enthusiasm and even to make classroom management decisions or pedagogical decisions in the classroom. They aren't always strong decisions, right? I'm not saying that it's always a net gain, right? But they're talking about doing this. But it's largely solitary work. It's not communal work. It's solitary work. They don't have a place where they can sort of use principles or teachings or understandings from their faith traditions to navigate the work that they do. And that's something that shows up in our recommendations. And you have these, so I'll go through them quickly. We think more information should be distributed about these partnerships that already exist. That's what Dr. Nicole is going to talk about next in the landscape report in the South. Regular communication between faith communities and public school systems. You know, the minister going to the school, what can we do to help? What do your teachers need? What do your students need? How can we provide support after school? What are the things that we can do to improve opportunities for students at your school? Take that initiative. Targeted educational programming, more coordinated partnerships that are mutualistic, that meet the needs of the school, first and foremost, and also the sort of volunteer capabilities of the local faith community as well. And then more opportunities for educators to have communal spaces to find ways that their faith informs their public school work. And then obviously, you're not a researcher if you don't say we need more research, right? We need more research. So again, please write us. Please be in communication. Here's our report, and we look forward to digging in the panel as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bryant. It's been a joy working with him, and we look forward to continued work. I am excited to bring up my friend and colleague, Nicole Baker-Fulgham. Nicole has been doing this work also at the intersection of faith and education for a long period of time. She actually started an organization called the Expectations Project, which is all about engaging faith communities in the work of advocacy. So her partnership around this next report, along with J.B. Schramm, I saw J.B. somewhere, was just amazing, and we're really excited about having both of these reports out at this time. Can you welcome Nicole with me, please?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I come to you as a product of the Black church tradition. So from my perspective, the answer to that first question that Dr. Scott posed was obvious. If you know the Black church, you know we come from a rich tradition of putting our faith in action, whether it's the abolitionist movement, civil rights movement, economic challenges now. So for me, this is just such a personal, natural extension of how I see those two things intertwined. And I'm thrilled to get a chance to share more about this report and some of the findings. We encourage you to read it, as my previous speaker said as well. And the fact that the title is landed this way just makes me even more happy. The subtitle there, it's a vibrant ecosystem poised for deeper impact. So let's dig into what that means. So as we've been sharing, religious communities have been here. So this question of, is this work happening, is really not the question. It's more so to what extent is it happening, and how and why, and what does it look like, and how can we really lift that up. And from our lens, we see that historically faith communities are already very deeply supportive of public schools. It's been happening for generations and honestly hundreds of years. The type of work that faith communities are involved in, it has a wide range. You can see some of those things listed here. We'll get into those a little bit more in depth in a moment. But what we realized is that this field, while it's vast and again exists quite deeply, it's generally underdocumented. It can be fragmented, not in a negative way. It's just doesn't have a lot of connective tissue, and it's often unevenly supported. And so this idea that this landscape analysis reveals what already exists, and as we said when we were analyzing the data, we just haven't seen it clearly yet, and we're excited to bring some clarity to that. I'm gonna step a little bit here. Okay, so what did we find? Some key stats just to ground us all. As you can see, we found about 1,500 or so partnerships identified across 9 states, including the District of Columbia. The report goes more into the methodology of how we found those, but it's a combination of one-on-one interviews, referrals, and then using the best of the AI technology to help us identify some of those across the interwebs, as we old folks say. And 81% of those were urban. We also thought it would be helpful to give some sort of comparison, so you've got a sense of, is this a lot, is it a little? So there are more than 104,000 congregations of all faith backgrounds in those same states and the District of Columbia, more than 18,000 public schools. That gives you some idea of what those sort of partnership ratios could look like. Then we also had the idea to give you some comparison of other organizations that work nationally with public schools, just to get a sense of where this work lies. And you can see from our analysis at the bottom, essentially faith communities are already one of the largest volunteer-based supports in public education. It already exists, right? And we use these two comparisons of how many Teach for America public school sites exist, as well as communities in schools. And you can see this is higher than both of those, so a good comparison for scope. So what do these partnerships do? 3 things are the general categories that we found, and most of them fall into this. So the first category are public school partnerships that focus on advocacy. And so this idea of engaging in policy change, perhaps working on equitable funding practices, this sort of systems level change. Not surprisingly, only about 6% of the partnerships we identified focus on that, and it's not a judgment question. That's just, quite frankly, it's harder to do, right? And it requires a different type of skill and training to be able to do that. And those that are doing it quite well, though. The second area are those that focus on academic needs. And so those are things like tutoring, mentoring, a lot of folks leaning into literacy and helping our kids read more effectively, about 36% there. And then the bulk of the partnerships are focused on what we called immediate need. And so that's, what do families need today? Food insecurity issues, helping ensure that kids have clothes, school supplies, teacher appreciation, and whatnot. So next, we want to share a little bit about what drives these partnerships to sort of grow and flourish and be impactful. A few things, and again, the report goes much more in depth on this. One of the things that we found is that programs that are structured drive results, right? That may not sound groundbreaking, but let me unpack that for you a little bit. Often, congregations are, motivated by doing something good, right? In the case of, helping kids learn how to read more effectively. And if you don't already have access to a structured program that has, delved probably a bit more into the science of reading, things that we know are going to move kids along academically, congregations are reinventing the wheel. And so as a result, probably aren't getting the same impact as a structured program. We're going to hear from the head of one of those programs today, Arise to Read, which is getting phenomenal results in many schools in Tennessee. The second thing that drives impact is that when there is an intermediary, sort of a hub, if you will, of whether it's a congregation, a faith community, that is helping to coordinate with other congregations in the city, it saves again, how do we start this? Where do we go? Who do we even partner with? They're able to provide that coordination, and it can really create a strong infrastructure to propel those partnerships. Next, district infrastructure matters at the school district level. So most school districts have community engagement offices. That's very common. The ones that we saw really lean into, here are all the ways that businesses, et cetera, can engage, and then specifically talk about how faith communities can engage to make it easy to talk about the law so we don't sort of overstep and do things that are not appropriate. It just provided such an easier entry point because congregations weren't having to do what the generous congregation did for Dr. Scott is, hi, we're here, we'd like to help and work with you. That can be tough if you don't have that relationship. And then finally, as a general rule, impact is undermeasured. Again, not a value judgment, just a fact. These are very busy congregations. They are not, here at Hugsy, they're not doing control studies for the most part with their work. Many are tracking activities, and some are getting to the measurable outcomes as well. So a couple of notes about where the field is what we would call uneven. So rural versus urban. I already shared the statistics about having more urban partnerships, but one of the things that we think is important to note is that rural communities do have these very deep relationships, in part because of how they're structured. They tend to know the families of the kids in the school in a different way in rural congregations. It's somewhat of a generalization, but there's real fact behind that. As a result, the majority of rural partnerships focus on immediate need, right? Because they see it, they know it, they feel it. But then we found that they have less access to some of these centralized tools. And so as a result, urban partnerships were 2 times more likely to have academic partnerships versus immediate need. The other piece that we found where the field is uneven, the majority of the partnerships that we did find through the landscape analysis reflect the Christian faith tradition. Again, that does somewhat align with that particular area of the country and what the religious tradition is of sort of the majority of the residents, but we know that's not the full story. And so we think there's a real opportunity to identify and support partnerships that reflect the diversity of religious and faith traditions in the U.S. And also to create more partnerships with religious communities that reflect the kids' racial and socioeconomic populations. Our sense is that there are probably more of those partnerships happening at smaller congregations that may reflect that. They just may not, have thought to publicize it. They may not have a website. So we think there's more to dig into there as well. And so the last couple thoughts on opportunity, we wanted to give some thought to what would really unlock this field. And you can see at the bottom, the takeaway is We don't necessarily need more volunteers. And again, if you work in a school, you might disagree with me. Or if you're a faith practitioner, you might disagree too. But we really want to lean into this idea that we need better infrastructure around the volunteers that we already have that are engaging. And so here are 4 ways that we think we can lean into that a bit. Expanding the access to some of these proven academic models. Investing in these intermediaries, meaning financial support to allow them to find other partnerships and other faith communities in the area and be that sort of interlocking connective tissue and getting some economies of scale. Strengthening those pathways at the state and district level that I mentioned earlier. And then this last idea of just building some simple impact tools, helping congregations who are engaged in this work to really reflect and measure what matters. And I saw that in some of the conversations I had, just simply asking a congregation leader, how do you feel about the work? What do you think is going well with your students? Just gave them the space to step back because they're busy doing the work. And that can really take them a lot further along in how they do the work. But I'll end on why this work matters, and we couldn't help but, of course, put pictures of the babies, right? This is why we're doing this work. As a person who taught years ago in Compton, California, in a public school, my congregation that I was involved in were the first people I turned to when I realized that my kids just needed more support for reading and math. They would show up at the McDonald's in Compton, and we just tutored kids. It was phenomenal and helped, but had I had access to something like a Rise to Read, something that was much more focused, I'm sure we would have seen even more impactful results. But every child that we know, the ones on these photos, the ones that we're thinking of, they all deserve access to a high quality education, and faith communities can absolutely be a part of helping them get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Now we're going to invite up our panel. Here we are. So we'll have them come up. As they are doing that, our panelists, Imam Naeem Baig, Nicole is going to join us, John Jameson, thank you so much, Dr. Latanya Mozan are going to join us. And we're going to ask them some questions, and we're also going to take some questions from, I believe, potentially virtually. And there's a way to do that, which we'll let you know that. Also, we'll take some questions from inside. I also want to recognize, I see some of my faculty colleagues here. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for coming. And also, we had some readers of the faculty, particularly here, of one of the reports that was very helpful. I just want to call them out. Peter Blair, Ebony Bridwell Mitchell, Tom Kane, Jimmy Kim, and Marty West, as well as Ilana Horowitz, John DeLulio. These are individuals who read the report, particularly the Education Renewal Report, and we really appreciate their engagement. But we want to join and begin some questions. Can you hear me okay? If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, do this. Y'all are good. That is really good. Let's just jump right into some questions. And I want to start with those individuals who are doing the work on the ground. There was just no way in the world I wanted to do these reports from the Leadership Initiative for Faith and Education, which was just research, which is important. It was really important to do practice also. What's happening on the ground? We can put it in paper, but we can also hear from individuals. So let me start with John Jameson. John, talk a little bit about the work that you do, the background, the connection, where you're doing it, just so we can get a sense of how you're doing it.
Sure.
Great to have you.
So I work with the South Carolina Baptist Convention. Our organization has existed for over 200 years. We serve about 1,600 congregations across the state. But our work in schools, public schools, really has about a decade plus history where we've had an intentional focus on serving public schools. And so in the past, 11, 12 years, we are seeing our congregation serve 671 public schools across South Carolina, which makes up 55%. So our goal, our vision, is to see every public school in South Carolina partnered with a church who will love them and serve them meaningfully. So we just crossed the halfway mark, and we're not stopping now. Yeah.
And when you say serve, I'm sure people are wondering, what does it mean to serve?
Yeah, sure. So we have a great relationship with South Carolina Department of Education, and so worked with them to really ask what would help look like. And so we actually ask our churches to do the same as your story, to go to the school instead of saying, we have a list of ways we're going to help, we say, how can we help? And so really in conversation with Department of Education, we kind of came up with these 3 bucket areas, even though we still let the school drive that, but it kind of hits these 3 areas. So teacher support, and that might look like, gift cards, notes of encouragement, coffee cart once a month, something like that, just to encourage teachers. Reading buddies. Obviously, we all know about the importance of that 3rd grade reading level, and so we focus on 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade in significant ways. And then beyond reading buddies, maybe some mentoring too in those older ages. And then the 3rd area is backpack buddies, and that's really just providing food for kids who are food insecure, primarily for the weekend. So the stats tell us that 1 in 6 students in South Carolina go to school hungry. And so we just know that, a student is not going to perform at their highest level when they're hungry, when they're distracted. And so we try to eliminate as many of those things as we can. But that's kind of how we show up at schools.
Beautiful. I'm going to stay with you just a second,
Okay, sure,
and we'll go to Dr. Mouzan. How do you ensure the separation of church and state?
Yeah, so separation, has already been talked about, separation of church and state does not tell me to diminish my faith. It doesn't tell me to compartmentalize my faith. It does say that when I step into the public sphere, that I have to respect and recognize that not everyone I encounter is going to have my faith or my belief or have a faith or a belief. And so when we step on a school campus, I think we understand that we are invited guests. And so how the best way that we ensure separation of church and state is just by honoring the parameters set forth by those educators, the people that we're serving. And so whatever parameters they give us, we want to walk in that very respectfully. Honestly, we don't want to mess it up for the next person, right? So we want to be respectful. So that's how we do it, by just honoring the request and the parameters set forth by that local school.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you heard the connection to the State Department of Education, right? So you are a nonprofit, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
You're a nonprofit coordinating faith-based churches going into schools, but you go to the State Department of Education at South Carolina to say, how can we do this in a coherent way across the state?
Our state superintendent is speaking at our next event. So we have a great relationship. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's amazing. You're impressing the panelists.
That's great. I just found something away to do.
Dr. Mouzan, thank you so much for being here. A Rise to Read. Nicole mentioned it a little bit, but give us a little more context. You're leading that amazing organization.
Sure. I was very pleased to hear a renewal. You heard several people say that. Arise stands for a renewal in student education. And there's a 2 there, and that 2 is for education and evangelism. So during the school day, we focus on reading support. We target our efforts for 2nd grade students, and we coordinate and implement a one-on-one 30-minute twice a week approach for students who are in education, what we would call tier 2 to maybe tier 3, early tier 3, who can benefit and access the support we provide. We work with 2nd graders, so they have to have some sense of what reading is in order for that to be successful. That's who we focus on. It is a volunteer force. We're in 46 schools in the city of Memphis, and our volunteers come from mainly churches, where we partner with those churches to not only adopt, but to provide our volunteers to do the work that we do. And I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, tell us a little bit. This comes out in the report. Can you talk a little bit about the history of Arise to Read, where it came from?
I sure can. So Rise to Read started with the first lady of one of the largest churches in Memphis, if not the largest church, Bellevue Baptist Church. Her name is Donna Gaines. She was praying about the state of education in the city, which is not different from the state of education across the nation. So she was praying and she said, the Lord said to her, this is your city. She's born and raised in Memphis. This is your city. These are your children. What are you going to do about it? Sometimes we forget that when we have a burden to pray, we think that we're praying for God to do it. But we are indeed the hands and feet of Jesus. And so he gave her the charge. And back in, I think, 2013 is when she got busy connecting with the churches in the area to get this program off the ground. She, too, is a trained educator.
And one of the powerful things about Arise to Read, you've got to read more about it, is they're one of those nonprofits that actually measure the impact they're having academically. And they're seeing outsized impact on reading as a result of the work that their volunteers are doing.
Yeah, that is true. We use workbooks, Excel workbooks, for the what we call head coaches or program specialists to document the data. And at the end of the year, we're able to analyze that data. Arise to Read only does the basics because that's all Arise to Read needs. But the school district does indeed analyze our data to see if there's a statistical difference between the children that we work with and the children that we do not work with. Typically, a t-test, that's a simple difference of groups. They don't do a t-test, they do a chi-square, which is a more rigorous test. And they do find that we indeed get our children perform better that Arise to Read works with than the ones that do not work with us on their benchmark assessments.
Another powerful point. You see how this nonprofit is using the language of the school system, understands the test, but it does require the school district to actually work with them and share with them the assessments that they're using so they can actually assess how they're doing. Those students are doing compared to other students. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Imam Naeem, thank you so much for joining us from Fairfax, Virginia. We got to talk. I spent some time in Fairfax, not too far away from Falls Church where he is, and I was so pleased. It's just an amazing sort of wonderful set of experiences that led us to Imam Naeem. His work comes up in our report. We weren't sure if we could get him, and I just got to share this. We were on our Zoom meeting, saying we've got to make sure we have some diversity in our event, and JB said, well, there was one imam, and they're doing amazing work in Virginia. And JB said, why don't I just call him right now? So we're on the Zoom. And JB was away for like 5 or 6 minutes, which was telling us he must have got in contact with him. And he came back on the Zoom and he said, he will be there. He will be there. And so we're so excited to have him join us. Can you talk a little bit about the work, first of all, your mosque, where it's located, and how you've been engaging with the Fairfax community, Fairfax Public Schools?
Thank you so much. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So I begin in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Thank you, Dr. Scott. And, it was during Ramadan, and I see a phone number that I don't recognize. And in Ramadan, usually our mind is, we are so busy, but I thought maybe someone is asking me for prayer timings or fasting, right?
We were praying.
So I answered the prayer. So, and that's how I connected with this beautiful, study and the amazing work that is being done. Dar al-Hijra is located in Falls Church, Virginia, established in 1983, so it is one of the oldest Islamic centers in Northern Virginia. Our our community, just to give you a quick, what our community looks like, there are 56 languages spoken in our community, in one Islamic center, people from all over the world. And there are people who are members of our Islamic center have been here for 3 or 4 generations, and there are people who have just in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 months. So you can imagine the challenges that even as an imam we face in our community, that people who know the culture, know the language, know the land, and there are people who are just struggling to, which way to go, which school to take our kids to, how do we speak with the teachers, what kind of classes our children should take. So that's how, when we got engaged in this work, and it was primarily because, we have to help our community. And these people are struggling, they don't know, sometimes age gaps. They will say, our kids were in 10th grade in the country that we came from, but now they're not, they are asking us to 9th grade or so. And then the issues, sometimes the discipline issues. Kid said something and, it was not appropriate, and how to handle that. And then we realized that, it's not, this relationship has to be with the principals, with the teachers, so that we can create that bridge between them. And that's how we started this engagement, this work. It's been almost 8-9 years now. Every year we invite the teachers and the educators for iftar in Ramadan. We hold an iftar together. I sent a short video to Dr. Scott for that. We do a program before the school year begins with the principals and the teachers, is to let them know what to expect from the Muslim kids and families. We invite parents to come into that conversation. And, once in a while, a principal will call and say, help me out with this situation, how to handle that. Funny example, we Muslims are supposed to pray 5 times a day, but when they are in school, and if they are in the age, they are, 14, 15 years old, they should pray. Not everyone prays, but there are kids who want to pray. But some wants to take advantage of the time, right? Yeah. So one day, a teacher called me and she said, Imam Naeem, how long does it take to offer the prayer? So I said, maybe 10 minutes or 12 minutes max. And she laughed and she said, I have a student, he goes for 30 minutes prayer break. So I said, no, he's taking advantage of the situation. I'm father of 4 kids who all went to public high school, public universities. Imams don't get enough paid, so you cannot afford private tuition. But my kids did, amazingly well, and they are serving in different capacities. But they also faced challenges. My son was called different names when he was in high school, right? Mm-hmm. But it was the principal who, when we sat with, and he told my son, face on, any person tells you anything, come to me. I am here for you. Mm. That's amazing when a principal is such a supportive of a Muslim kid. Mm-hmm. And I was recently at a program out of nowhere. This lady came to me and she asked me, are you Abdullah Beg's father? And I said, yes. And Abdullah graduated from high school 10 years ago, right? And she said, he was a blessing to have in my class. And it really made me very happy. And so when I told Abdullah that, I met your history teacher, and he said she was the best teacher that I ever had. So this relationship between teachers and parents and kids and parents is vital, and I'm really happy that this study was done. Looking into how these relationships can be strengthened and how faith communities can be part of this. We do tutoring, after-school tutoring. We offer support to the kids who are struggling in math and science. We do a program, it's called Rising Souls. and it is designed for kids who are in middle school. This is where we notice that they face the most amount of challenges, right? And we offer, there are 4 mentors who every Thursday night sit with these kids. What are the challenges you're facing in school? This is how we handled when we were in your age, when we were in school. So that's how they're receiving this support from our Islamic Center, our communities. We have a youth director. We have 4 mentors and we decided to designate these resources because the next generation who's going to these schools, if they are not socially responsible, if they are not, good human beings, then the society is lost. It's not just the Muslim community is going to lose. It's the society that is going to lose. And that's where we feel that this work is important.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. Just as an aside, Imam Naeem and I were talking before the event, and I just casually went up to him and I said, how are things going? And if it's okay to share, you've shared how his community is being impacted by the geopolitical events that are happening now. And so his response to me was very authentic. He was like, oh, it's a lot. It's a lot. Because families are connected to what's happening in the world. And he is very connected to those families. But here's the thing. Those kids show up in schools. And so him being in a position and his mosque being in a position to sort of bridge the gap between what's happening geopolitically and what they need to do at the school level is critically important.
First, can I add
Sure,
a little
sure.
bit? So in CARE, the Muslim Civil Advocacy Organization, their Massachusetts chapter did a survey of Muslim kids in school in 2024. And they released the report in February of 2025. According to the report, 35% of Muslim female students who covered their head like this sister, they reported that they were physically assaulted. Someone tried to pull, take this scarf off. 35%. Right? So, and this is where they sometimes don't want to tell their parents, right? But they find this space in mosques or Islamic centers where they can speak with other kids, and this is where we see that by creating these programs, these kids are also supporting each other, right? This peer support that they're getting in schools as well, and then it also, we played the role in as reaching out to the teachers and principals and to address these situations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to our individuals doing that work on the ground. I want to jump into the report real quick around this question of surprises. Anything surprise you, Nicole, Bryant? Maybe I'll answer this question also because I'm part of this. One of the things that surprised me was a study that was done by an individual at Grand Canyon University. And this was particularly focused on teachers and the role of faith. I think the group was special education teachers. And if you know anything about special education, that's a pretty challenging, all teaching is challenging. But what this report did was the researcher did, was actually asked teachers who were special education teachers, what role, if any, did their faith or religion play in helping them through the challenges of doing their work. And it was significant. It played a significant role in helping them sort of perceive themselves as a more effective teacher, be persistent, and that was one really powerful report. The other one was the moderating factors related to gender. And how faith, at least in one study, seemed to play a more significant role for males. So there were several things that surprised me as we were doing these studies. I wonder any surprises that you encountered, either Bryant or Nicole.
I think for me, one of the things that was such a wonderful surprise was to find organizations like the one in South Carolina that, not that I think I should have known all of this, but I've been in the space for a bit, and to find these organizations with hundreds of partnerships, and several of them, right? They're noted in the report, and I just think it's amazing to know that this work has been happening for years and years. You know, the work you've been doing at the mosque and just all around the country. And as we said in the report, it just hasn't really been elevated and put all together in one place. And I think that's what surprised me the most is just the vast number. And I'm sure there are things that will get added, right? That's part of why this report is being publicized, so people can say, oh gosh, wait, I'm doing something in here or there. There's just so much more out there, and I was pleasantly surprised by all of that.
That's actually an excellent point. One of the things that we have provided access to on website is an opportunity, if you're in one of those southern states, for you to go to a site and actually share, we're a faith-based organization doing partnerships with this school. We'll find a way to vet that that information, and then we will actually upload it. So our goal is to populate over time the work that is happening in these states. And Nicole and JB were instrumental in setting that up. Maybe before we get away, we'll give you an example of that. Bryant, anything for you? Anything surprising?
Yeah, just quickly to piggyback on what you mentioned, Irvin. I think the thing that was surprising to me was how religiously diverse the studies were of teachers.
Yeah.
I think of the three group categories of research that we looked at, the faith of students and families, the effects of educational programs of faith organizations. And the third was the sort of religiosity or spirituality of teachers. I wasn't surprised that teachers are more religious or spiritual than other professions. I was surprised at how diverse the literature was in terms of the faith affiliations. There wasn't as much evidence in that third category, but it was the most international, and it was the most diverse. There were Buddhist teachers that were reported in the empirical literature, Muslim teachers, Christian teachers, and the effects or the sort of dynamic of how their spirituality informs their work. There were resounding themes that cut across those faith traditions, and that I didn't expect, so that was surprising to me.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to make a note. We have people joining us virtually. If you do this QR code, you can actually ask questions. We'll try to get a couple questions in before we end, because we are at time, but I grew up in church, and we never ended time. Just kidding. No, we will try to be close to time. Nicole, real quick, one of our goals is to do this research not just in the southeast part of the country, but in other parts of the country. Any learning, do you think we're going to find it easier to do based on what we've learned in this previous process?
I definitely think we will. I mean, JB and I learned a lot, and looking at my colleague in the process. One, I think we learned how to find partnerships more effectively. So we definitely played around and had a data scientist that was working. She wasn't playing, she was doing the work with a large language model to try to figure out, can we find those? And then once we find them, how do we ensure that it's actually what we're looking for? So that model has been refined. I also think we learned that good old ChatGPT. You can find a lot from that, right? And so I think that also some of the basic sort of methodology pieces. But I think we're also going in with a framework, right, that we pulled from this research that has been speaking, particular themes. And I'd be curious to see if those themes hold, right? Yeah. Different parts of the country have different, strengths and sort of different things that they're leaning into, and so I think I'm curious to see if that holds true and what we're trying. The trick, right, for research is you don't go in with an assumption, right? You have to sort of start fresh and see what does the data tell you. And so we will be working hard not to make assumptions as we go and hopefully do this work in other places.
Awesome. I want to shout out the Gates Foundation. They helped us do this first report, and we're looking forward to doing other reports with funders out there. So we're looking forward. One of the things that excites me about future research possibilities, Bryant, is that research that happened with Grand Canyon University as special education teachers. I think you could do sort of a larger research project on the role of faith for teachers. You've actually shown interest in, or expressed interest when we were talking, not only the role that it plays on how they view themselves in the profession, but actually how they teach. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, we had the aspiration to be able to demonstrate empirically that, you know, the religious faith of teachers has a direct effect on their students' outcomes and their student participation. We did not find that evidence. We didn't see studies that tried to investigate that. I think empirically it's a little difficult research design-wise. The closest thing we found was that the religiosity of teachers has a significant relationship with their self-efficacy beliefs, or their belief in their own ability to teach in ambitious ways well, referred to as teacher efficacy, and that's encouraging, but it's not the same as saying my religious faith benefits, as a teacher, benefits my students. And so we'd love to see more work on that. I'd love to sort of see more nuanced work about how teachers with larger samples, because these were also small sample studies. You know, there were some survey studies, but they weren't large. I'd love to work with teacher unions out there. Shout out to teacher unions out there, like NEA and others, to sort of think about how representative samples of teachers might draw on their faith to engage in this work. And there's lots of ways we could do that methodologically as well.
Beautiful. Any questions from the audience? Yes, over here, and then a question here, and I have to get my pad for the question for online. Go ahead, yes.
I have a question on the teachers who felt called. Was there any, with roughly 40-50% of students or teachers who leave the profession the first 5 years, is there a greater correlate to those who have high religiosity, who feel called to teach, they stay longer, is their tenure longer, or were there any of those kind of findings in this research?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to restate it for the video, the question. Maybe I'll restate it.
Okay.
So the question is, so it is an empirical sort of fact that public school teachers in the first 5 years of the profession, about half of them leave the profession for lots of different reasons, you know, personal life issues. But also a resounding reason is they don't feel like they have the support they need to thrive in the profession. There's some evidence already about that. We did not see evidence that sort of teachers who identify, in terms of existing studies, that teachers who identify or religiously or spiritually are more likely to stay. But certainly I have that assumption, right? And I'd love to test that assumption. And that's one of the things I'd love to study further. There's a wonderful book that I'll plug here called Demoralized. I think it was actually published by Harvard Education Press. And the subtitle is fantastic. Why Teachers Leave the Profession They Love and How They Can Stay. It's not teacher burnout, right? Which is sort of like assumes that the teacher just individually doesn't have what it takes to persist. It's that they are demoralized. They don't have the moral supports they have to access rewards that are inherent to the profession because of institutional challenges, right? And I think faith can be part of that answer, faith organizations and so forth. But we need to test that empirically. I think it's a great question.
More opportunities to learn. Yes. Good to see you.
Me? Yes.
Now can
My name is Tanya. I am
It's good to see you.
I can't wait to dig into the report. I'd like to talk a little bit more than the sort of macro geopolitical climate that's going on in this country and the world, but the very specific and unfortunate use of religion as a tool to divide and harm. How are you doing the work in this climate? Honestly, I'm really interested in your response.
Yeah, well, let me jump in. I think this is one of the reasons why I get the question, why are you doing this work now? Because many people see religion being used to divide, to hurt, to ostracize. And so, to be clear, life is not in the business of saying what you're doing is wrong. We're not trying to come out and say this religion's wrong with what they're doing. What we're trying to do is uplift what is happening that is right, that is healthy, oftentimes being done in the name of the same religions that are doing things that are harmful. So to the extent that we can shine light on how religion is being used in a way that edifies, in a way that is actually supporting academic growth, and that's safe, then we believe that will help people to understand that not everybody is using that particular religion for that way. Some are just making sure that kids are fed. Some are making sure that kids can read. And if we shine more light on that, hopefully people will at least see that there's another way to think about how religion is being moved forward throughout our communities.
And I would say too, it's a macro question, but the solution is a micro solution. And so I would say for all of us, we're focused on individual relationships at individual school campuses with individual administrators. And so as we build trust, and we may have to overcome some assumptions, maybe on both sides, but when we do that individually, I think we give each other the opportunity to move forward together.
And I'll also just quickly add, there are a couple of notes in the landscape study that point to interfaith councils doing this work in community, and I think I'm sure there are more, right? So if you're out there, please let us know. But I think that's a really powerful way to show people of diverse faith traditions coming together and saying, we are concerned about the kids in our school district, and we're going to work collectively to do this work. I think that there's real power there.
And I know we're just about at time, but what I wanted to add is that we go in as the people who have the faith to do the work. The faith drives us to do the work, but the work is what is key. And as long as we focus on that work, we're able to, without effort, show that there are individuals who divide, not religion. And so we're able to build that without having to use the words, which is what we teach our volunteers. You go in to do the work, and because you are of faith, that drives you to do it, but you don't have to say or prove any of that. In fact, we cannot, because we go in during the school day.
I'm
going to.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is an issue, right? Our engagement, meaning our country's engagement in different parts of the world, in wars, and creating a lot of suffering. Okay? Our Muslim kids, if we are not going to speak with them on these topics, they have cell phones, right? They will listen to someone's sitting somewhere in a different part of the world, right? So we address this. We speak with them. We talk to our kids. And at the same time, the relationship that we have been able to build with the schools around us, right? Especially high schools. That, for example, Arlington County Public School, right? So Dar Hijra is like at the border of Fairfax and Arlington. And the executive director of the DEI program, Dr. Tyrone Bird, we text each other every other week. And it is all about how do you want to address this issue now? The Muslim kids are not happy with what they're watching on the social media or what they're seeing. And then we come up with some solutions to address those things. And one of the things that Dr. Bird did was that one day he called, I think 40, 50 teachers. And he invited me, he invited a rabbi, and we sat and we talked about it, right? So the teachers are able to hear us in different perspectives that are there. It is challenging. It is, some kids will understand, some kids will not, but that's the work that we are doing.
I want to take two questions from, but we're not going to necessarily answer, but I want to call them out at least to acknowledge from our online audience. One is actually from cohort 3 of OEL. She says, "Hi, Dr. Scott, this is Lauren." So thank you, Lauren. She said, "My concern is around public education actually counting on the religiosity of educators to keep them involved in the profession that burns them out." Isn't that a powerful point? She's like, well, let's be cautious. should we have to rely on their religion in order for them to stay in the profession? And so that's work that the profession needs to do on itself to ensure that we're supporting teachers in a way. It's great that they have religion, but what can we do to make sure that those jobs are doable, viable, and places where people can feel like they can thrive? And then another question has to do with, it says, have there been any considerations for how schools might partner with faith-based organizations leveraging existing programs such as Sunday school or Vacation Bible School to support and enrich student learning? I don't think I remember seeing anything about research on Sunday school, which is a powerful existing, or school that happens at a mosque or a synagogue that is already embedded in that faith community. I don't remember any research there.
Most of the studies we looked at were programs within the school or in collaboration with the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting idea.
Dr. Scott, if I
Yes.
just address the issue of teachers and their religious.
Sure.
So my wife is a early childhood education teacher, and she teaches in Loudoun County Public School. There are days when she's so stressed that my daughters say, "Mom, if you don't, why you're so you don't have to work. You can." And she said, "Well, let me think about it." And then she's back in school. And then sometimes she says, "My kids love me so much." And then I have to ask her, "Who are you talking about? Kids in school or your own kids?" And he said, "No, kids in school. They love me so much." So I think that is where I think faith helps. That is where her own spirituality helps her, that she feels that she is giving that love and compassion to these kids.
Can you help me thank our panelists for joining us? Thank you. We've gone over a little time, but I just want to thank everyone for joining us. This will be recorded, and it's just been a joy. We will be doing the same type of event at BYU, where we'll be releasing both reports in Utah. And so we're really excited. I want to shout out the Life Advisory Team. We may have some members here or online. They help support the work that I do on an ongoing basis. We have some Life Fellows, one of the Life Fellows right here, Robin, and the faith leaders and educators, many of whom are here tonight or joining us virtually. Thank you for doing the work that you do on a daily basis. We're really, really appreciative of. Read the reports, take some time, communicate with us, because we're hoping it's just the beginning. I am shocked that I'm going to actually end this event without singing, but I am. Thank you. Great night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.